All right, let's get right into it. When an orthopedic surgeon is looking at a really nasty shoulder fracture, they're not just seeing a broken bone. No, they're actually playing detective. They're on the hunt for hidden clues, little signs of a much bigger danger that could change everything for the patient. Today, we're going to crack the code they use to predict the future of that injury. It's a powerful checklist, and it's known as the Hertel Criteria. So just picture it, a complex break. The bone is in multiple pieces. But you know what? The surgeon's biggest fear isn't just about putting those pieces back together like a puzzle. There's this silent threat, a hidden danger lurking in the background that can completely undermine even the most perfect surgery. So what is it? And that danger, that hidden threat, is something called ischemia. It's a simple idea, but it's terrifying in practice. It means the bone's blood supply gets choked off. And without blood, the bone tissue can't get any oxygen, can't get nutrients, and it literally starts to die. In the shoulder, we call this avascular necrosis, or AVN. And believe me, it is the one complication that keeps surgeons up at night. So how on earth can a surgeon see this coming before it even happens? Well, like I said, they become a detective. They pull out a very specific toolkit to analyze the X-ray, searching for these subtle clues that point towards the risk of ischemia. And that toolkit, it has a name. It's the Hertel Criteria. The best way to think about it is like a specialized magnifying glass, designed just for looking at fracture X-rays. It's essentially a checklist of specific patterns and measurements that, when you put them all together, they paint a remarkably clear picture of that bone's chances of survival. Now, within this checklist, there are 3 clues that are way more important than all the others. We call these the smoking guns. These are the pieces of evidence that most powerfully predict whether that bone is going to make it or not.
The first, and you could argue the most powerful clue, is the condition of something called the medial hinge. You can think of it as the structural linchpin for the bone's entire blood supply. So yeah, its integrity is absolutely crucial.
So what exactly is it? Well, the medial hinge is that main point of contact on the inner side of your arm, connecting the ball of the shoulder to the long shaft of the bone. A great way to picture it is like the main plumbing line for the bone. It's the critical pathway for all the blood vessels that feed the head of the humerus. And here is where the details get really, really important. If that hinge is disrupted, if the bone fragments are separated by more than just 2 millimeters, that is a massive red flag. That tiny little gap suggests that the blood vessels running through that area have been stretched, or maybe even torn. It's a tiny measurement for sure, but it has huge implications for blood flow. Okay, let's move on to our second smoking gun. This one is all about how much bone is actually left supporting the head of the humerus. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's called the metaphyseal head extension. Now, what's so interesting here is that this clue isn't just about the break itself, but about the stability of the whole structure. This metaphyseal head extension is basically the foundation of bone that the ball is sitting on. And just like with a house, a smaller foundation means less contact, less stability, and a much, much higher risk to those fragile blood vessels running through the area. And you guessed it, we have another critical number here. If that foundation, that bony contact, measures less than 8 millimeters, well, that's when the alarm bells really start to go off. That is our second smoking gun, a clear indicator that the blood supply is in a very, very dangerous spot. The third and final major clue is less about a measurement and more about location, location, location. It all comes down to whether the break is a very specific type, something we call an anatomical neck fracture. So here's the bottom line. An anatomical neck fracture is pretty much the worst case scenario for blood supply. The break happens right at the base of the ball, effectively cutting it off from the shaft and severing its primary lifelines. When a surgeon sees this pattern on an X-ray, the risk of ischemia just skyrockets. So those 3 are the heavy hitters for sure. But you know, a good detective never relies on just a few pieces of evidence. There are other supporting clues that help them build a more complete, more confident diagnosis. Yeah, these are all other little details that help build the case. You know, things like, has the head of the bone itself actually split apart? Or maybe it's been completely dislocated from the socket? Or is the fracture just shattered into 4 or more really complex pieces? Each one of these factors adds more weight to the case for a high risk of ischemia, helping to really solidify the surgeon's final call. Okay, so we have all the evidence, we have the smoking guns, we have the supporting facts. How does the surgeon put it all together to crack the case and, most importantly, decide what to do next? Well, it really comes down to a simple but incredibly powerful rule of thumb. The risk of avascular necrosis, of that bone dying, goes up dramatically when 2 or more of these major predictors are present. See, it's not just about one clue. It's the combination of clues that tells the whole story. And this is how it all flows together logically. The surgeon examines the X-ray, they meticulously tally up every Hertel predictor they can find, and if they hit that magic number of 2 or more, they classify the risk as high. And that final assessment, that's what directly shapes the entire surgical plan. And this right here is where all that detective work really pays off, because this is why it matters so much. If the ischemia risk is low, the surgeon will most likely repair the original bone with plates and screws. That's a procedure called an ORIF. But if the risk is high, trying to save a bone that's probably going to die anyway is a lost cause. In that case, they'll go straight to a replacement. For a younger patient, that might be a partial replacement, a hemiarthroplasty. For an older patient, it might be a full reverse arthropathy. The Hertel criteria are what guide this absolutely monumental decision. So it's pretty incredible when you think about it. We've seen how surgeons can act as detectives, using these clues to predict the fate of a fractured bone with remarkable accuracy. It's an amazing diagnostic tool. But it does leave us with one final fascinating question. If we're this good at predicting the death of the bone, what's the next great leap forward? Could it be figuring out a way to prevent it from ever happening in the first place?